So hello everyone and welcome to today's event provided to you by Centro Studi Galileo in collaboration with two of its partners, Carel and Fieldpiece. So you see the event is about the latest developments in HVACR following F-gas 3.0, best practices, safety and tools. Before we dig into the event, I'm gonna quickly guide you through a few rules, if you want to call it like that. The event will last 1 hour, 1 hour and 15 minutes. Each speaker will have 15 minutes for their own presentation, followed by a quick Q&A session, about 5 minutes-ish, and a final debate. You can ask your questions anytime. Please use in the dedicated Q&A box. You can see it in the control bar at the bottom of the page. Otherwise, you can simply write a chat message in the chat box directly to myself. I will read your questions to the speakers in the dedicated moments. And if you don't manage to write it, or it doesn't come to your mind, or if we don't have the time to read them all, the speakers will be available anytime via email. You can see their email addresses during their presentations, and you don't have to worry, you will receive the presentations afterwards, together with the video recording of this event. You can see the event is being recorded. It will be elaborated and available in about 1 week time from now. It will be sent to you via email. So this is it. This is about it. And now I'm going to introduce you the presentations of the speakers. We will start with Giovanni Carli, application specialist of Carel, talking to us about connectivity, the installer's tool in a fast-changing environment. Then we will move on to Chester-Marsden presentation, technical training engineers of Fieldpiece, who will show the system evacuation easier, faster, and better. Now I have the pleasure to leave the word to our CEO, as well as former President of International Affairs of Area, Marco Buoni. And I thank you very much for your attention. Enjoy your webinar.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Silvia. Thank you very much, Giovanni and Kyle. I have just a few minutes for a presentation. Introducing myself from Silvia. Thank you, Silvia, for presenting myself, and to present AREA, the European Air Conditioning and Refrigeration Association of Contractors. We represent 26 national associations from 22 countries. We represent the installers, the people that install, design, repair, maintain all kinds of refrigeration and air conditioning systems with every kind of refrigerants. And I'm also the Secretary General of the Italian Association of Refrigeration and Air Conditioning, ATF. As said, I'm CEO of Centro Studi Galileo. We do training worldwide. We do training for many companies, countries, associations. We cooperate with the United Nations, European Commission, Ministry of Environment, and we cooperate with many associations globally. We have also a magazine, International Special Issue, and we do conferences. The last conference was very well attended, with main important association, which I mentioned earlier, and we had 220 people present, 50 remotely from 38 countries. And also we awarded for a very important award, which is the Best Woman in Refrigeration, which is already in the 2nd edition. And we will award the women in Belfast in end of May, 23rd of May, at the Italian Museum of Belfast. We'll be there to give an award together with the World Refrigeration Day Secretariat, our good friend, and also HVACR, our good friend, who is also teacher of our association, of our training center in Belfast. Also, the next conference, we hope again with the United Nations, IR, the European Commission, and all the latest all the latest information about the new F-gas regulation, F-gas 3.0, about the latest developments in technology, the new refrigerants, will be the 12th, 13th of June 2025. So put in your agenda, please. We are now 80 participants participating at the moment in this seminar. So thank you very much all to be here. As said, we have an international special issue that delivered with the United Nations, with the International Institute of Refrigeration, which will be delivered at the most important exhibition conferences, meeting, summit of Montreal Conference, climate change conferences, was in Nairobi, Dubai, Bangkok. Here the picture was in Rome. In Rome, we delivered this important international issue. We are in a period of transition. We know that. And it's a very important transition. Our sector is on the spotlight. We are really on, an important moment. It's growing, our sector. We need to grow it properly. We need to grow it with knowledge, with experience, with competence. We are transitioning from gas boiler to heat pumps. We are transitioning from HFCs to low-GWP refrigerants. We are transitioning from separate heating, cooling system to an integrated solutions. One system doing everything for the best comfort, for the best efficiency, for the best of the climate, for the best of the environment. And digitalization, domotic, is very important to control properly all these systems. And what does it mean? We need to do it properly, safely, with a performance, with environment focus. We have a new F-gas regulation, the 3.0 I said earlier, which is called EU 2024-573, which is not the refrigerant number, 5373. But now we are focusing a lot on competence, a lot of training. We are going to have soon, and we are working with DG Clima, the European Commission, on delivering the right skills for the technicians. We already have a set of important rules to follow, because we will have a mandatory certification for also alternative and natural refrigerants. We are going to have an implementing act. Probably will be in June, the draft, and in September to be adopted. Every country, you can see here, will have then 1 year time to implement it in national law. So, if everything goes smoothly, in 1 year and a half, we will have a new training and certification scheme for alternative refrigerants. And people, technicians, personnel, every 7 years need to do a refresh training and certification. Need to renew it. And it will be recognized in all member countries at the same time. A consistent training and mandatory certification scheme, which is very important. To have the same level of training, knowledge, way of working in our sector is very important. And not only for stationary refrigeration, not only for that. Also for mobile air conditioning. Duty, so let's start from the beginning. Not only for stationary, but also for refrigerant unit in light duty vehicles, intermodal containers, train, wagons, but also in air conditioning equipment, in mobile vans, in tractors, trains, metro, tram, aircraft. We need to be properly trained. Every person needs to be properly trained. And also the undertakings, the company need to be certified. In area, we have a proposal for having a set of categories for the natural refrigerant, for hydrocarbons, CO2, ammonia. A set in parallel to what is already available, because we have different skills, different systems, different problems, different solutions. New skills. We had block 12 for flammability. Probably you remember we had 11 blocks of skills. We want to add a flammability block, a high pressure block, a toxicity block. Based on ISO, which is international standard for training and certification, which is already available, the 22712. And we already also have available, training for natural refrigerants, which is used in all these green countries already. It's called realalternatives.eu. You can download it and do it for free online, or in practice, because the important part is the practical part. In our training providers, in all these green countries, only qualified training provider, around 30 in all these countries. Remember, we need to focus on the differences in practice with natural refrigerants. It's already available certification in few countries. Now will be in all countries. Already available in Denmark, Estonia, Finland, Netherlands, Spain, certification for natural refrigerants. But we need to do more. We know it, because we are moving to hydrocarbons on heat pumps. We are moving to A2L. We're already using A2L. We are moving a lot on alternative refrigerant. We need to do it because we need to phase out HFCs, in particular the high GWP HFCs. We have different procedures. We have different procedures with new refrigerants. In particular, we need to have very well ventilated area, free of source of ignition for all kinds of refrigerants. For CO2, which is not flammable, but in particular for the flammable ones, very well ventilated area. We need the proper equipment, proper tools. We need the proper leak testing methods with a right leak detector, which can detect the refrigerants. We need to charge in the proper way. Hydrocarbons are less, they weight less, so we need more precise scales. And we need to recover. Also, the natural refrigerant need to be recovered when you have, for example, high quantities of hydrocarbons. Is more safe to recover hydrocarbons in high quantities than to leave it venting in the atmosphere for the safety point of view, of course. Ammonia need to be recovered, for sure. CO2 need to be vented in the proper way, safely. So we need to do risk assessment. It's very important. A risk assessment of our system in our building to be sure that we have following all the right procedures. And also we have some safety requirement at the site of operation. DigiClima gave very important advice during our conference in Mostra Convenium. We need, so probably you know that, for example, for heat pumps below 12 kilowatts, from 2027, we cannot have any more HFCs. We need to use hydrocarbons from 2027 in small heat pumps, monoblock, self-contained. But there are some derogation for safety requirements. DigiClima said that we need to label properly the system if it is installed due to a derogation. Will be a label and will be an implementing act, which the European Commission will soon give to us for that. Why we need to go after this derogation? For a site-specific conditions, relevant local codes, national restriction, European standards, for example, the EN 378, which is an important standard for us. And the operators, the end user needs to keep the evidence why we use this derogation. And the end user need to have a very important advice, and this is my last slide, my conclusion, need to have a very important advice, guidance by the installer. The installer will have an important role to give the end user the right instruction, the right guide, the right information to his systems, how to, why install these systems, keep the logbooks, and give them, the right guidance to end users. VS378 is very important. We have an app, ARE app. Please use it. And we thank our partner for giving us always this great opportunity to exchange information, exchange knowledge, exchange skills with so many people. We have 100 participants at the moment at this webinar. I pass the word to Giovanni. You can share now your screen. I stopped my presentation, and so now Giovanni can share and speak about connectivity, the installer's tool in a fast-changing environment. Thank you to Carel for always his important role in our conferences. The floor is yours, Giovanni.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Let me know if you see my screen. Is it everything okay, Marco?
Perfect.
Okay. A couple of words about myself. I am Giovanni Carli, Sales and Marketing Application Specialist, Refrigeration at Carel. And today I will talk about connectivity, focusing in particular on how connectivity can help the daily job of HVAC and refrigeration operators in this fast-changing environment. So today we are indeed dealing with a fast-changing world. The new F-gas that was mentioned finally sets an endpoint to F-gas refrigerants in 2050. And even if there isn't an explicit obligation, it seems that natural refrigerants are the best future direction. So what does this mean for HVAC and refrigeration operators? I mean, what is the impact of these changes in everyday field activities? Well, first of all, it means having to adopt new ways of working, new methods, and new techniques. For example, if we look at the main natural refrigerants that are currently in use, we have, for example, CO2 that requires working with higher pressures. We have propane and ammonia implying higher safety standards. So generally speaking, we see a higher complexity of techniques to be adopted on field. All of these techniques obviously must be acquired somehow by installers. And so it means time and effort to adapt to the change. Time, finally, even if it's still today a very valuable resource for everybody working on field, it will become more and more important in the future. So in this context of growing technical complexity, for Carel, the new resource, the new tool, let's say, that the installers has in his toolbox is connectivity. For us, the connectivity is the factor that helps to mitigate the impact of this increased complexity of installations, and it can help in simplifying everyday job on field. You know that as Carel, we have a wide range of IoT solutions that cover the different needs of our heterogeneous customer base. Today, I want to focus on, as I said, HVAC and refrigeration technicians. So I will talk about our range of smartphone apps dedicated to simplifying and improving commissioning and service and maintenance activities. So thanks to these apps, what we can achieve is for sure the possibility of preventing errors, doing less mistakes in unit configuration and generally speaking in field operations. On the other hand, we can also save time, which, as I said, is a very valuable resource today. The first app I'm going to talk about is Applica. Applica is the smartphone app dedicated to our electronic controllers and dedicated to the technicians that work with them. It's available both for Android and iOS, and we can connect our smartphone using NFC and Bluetooth to our electronic controllers. Thanks to Applica, we can improve what we do with the electronic controller. So I mean installation, obviously service and maintenance, and we achieve three main gains. First of all, we have a higher usability if we compare the new interface that the smartphone offers compared to the traditional interface with the display and buttons on the controller. We have more functions, we have more features that we can use to do more with our controller. And finally, we get more information because data are stored inside the controller, and thanks to the smartphone, we are able to access to them and have much more possibilities. So what is interesting about Applica is that one single app, we cover many different Carel products and so different product applications. As I said, the app is the same, and when we connect to a controller using Applica, it's able to recognize what kind of controller it has in front, and it's able to change the interface accordingly. So the end result will be that we will see different Applicas interface, but the app is just the same. On this slide, we have some examples of what Carel controllers we can connect to Applica right now. We have IJ product range, which is our product range dedicated to refrigeration. So applications of cold rooms or generally speaking, food catering. We have MPX 0 and 1 for food retail. We have micro rack, which is the solution for condensing units. And finally, we have micro chiller, which is on this slide representative for HVAC applications because Applica covers HVAC applications as well. So to get more in details of what Applica does and what benefits refrigeration and HVAC operators can achieve using it, I decided to explain with an example. The example we choose is IJW. IJW, we saw it in the previous slide, is our brand new controller. It came out in 2023, dedicated to refrigeration applications. A couple of words about the controller itself. It is dedicated to, refrigeration installers, and it was designed to have the maximum possible usability. For this reason, it is the solution that we suggest for repairs and substitution of legacy controllers on field. It has Bluetooth and NFC connectivity, so we can connect to the smartphone using our apps, for sure Applica, that we will see in detail, but it also has another dedicated app called Controllo, that I want to mention here because I think it's quite interesting. It is not dedicated to installers, it's dedicated to end users, and it works as a sort of simplified interface to the controller, giving access to temperature registered, to alarms, and access to direct functions. So we suggest it to installers as an additional service to propose with the controller. Okay, so now let's see what we can achieve by exploiting the synergy between IJW and Applica app. The first big difference compared to traditional electronic controllers is the new high usability interface. We pass, as we see here, from a 3-digit display that in the best case could display maybe an alarm LED to a new wide graphic and dynamic smartphone display, where we have much more possibilities to exploit. The first thing we're gonna see when we connect from Applica to IJW, but generally speaking to all our connected controllers, is the unit status menu. Here we have the main information about the unit, measure temperatures, load status, and we also have access to direct functions. From this menu, clicking on the bell, we have access to the alarms currently active on the controller, along with their description in order to make the comprehension more simple. We can also see the logged alarms, so historical alarms saved in IJW, categorized by date and time of occurrence. To simplify the setup of the controller, we can set the parameters from Applica using the parameter list function. Here we have all the controller's parameters with a simplified description to make the navigation easier. We can search through this list directly inputting part of the description to make even the research more simple. We can filter the parameters with some predefined filters, and we can create a list, a customizable list of favorite parameters. Also, the programming, as you can see in the lower screenshot, is made simple with a menu with simplified description of the values that each parameter can assume. With this new interface, we also have access to many more information from the controller. For example, in case we have to do a troubleshooting to understand if something happened to our unit when we were not on field, we can use the data trend function. On this function, we can see the historic data logs that are stored in the controller and see, for example, the temperature and set point trends over time. We can see the maximum and minimum temperature bands, and for traditional applications, we also have data about compressor running time and activations. The configuration management function is very helpful and helps to save time on field, because we can export and import configuration files from IJW using Applica, reducing the time spent in configuring the product. For example, if we have to do multiple machines with the same parameters, we can just copy and paste from a controller to the other blank controllers. We can store the configuration in our smartphone as a backup. We can clone a device including the logs, and we can also compare different configurations. Last but not least, the configuration wizard is what can support the installer, the technician, in the first configuration of IJW. It's a 5-step guided procedure that we can use to program the controller from scratch just by answering 5 simple questions. So apart from the time saving in the configuration, thanks to the fact that you don't program parameter by parameter, but groups of parameters together, this function also minimizes the effort in learning how to use an IJW. The next up I'm going to talk today is relatori. So as I mentioned in the beginning, when we work with natural refrigerants, the topic of safety is very important. For this reason, as Carel, we propose our gas leakage detector product range. It is a sensor that can detect and report refrigerant leakages in the refrigerated environment. We offer it in 2 different versions, the built-in version and the remote version, and they cover more or less all the most commonly used refrigerants. I'm speaking about GLD in this presentation because it is also a connected device. It has Bluetooth, and we can connect it to our smartphone thanks to relatori. Relatori is the dedicated app that we can use to achieve a simpler and quicker commissioning and also maintenance activity. Here we can see some screenshots of relatori. On the left, we have the detection function. We use it as a sort of enhanced display of the sensor, and it shows the refrigerant concentration that the sensor is currently measuring. Green indicator means that the situation is under control. On the other hand, red indicator means we are in an alarm situation. In the middle, we have the programming menu. Is very similar to the programming, to the parameter list of Applica. Here we can set up all the device by programming all the parameters. We have descriptions for each parameter to make it easier to understand. And we can also set up supervision parameters. This system indeed can be connected to our BOSS system in order to ensure constant monitoring of the environment. On the right screenshot, we can see another function of gas leakage detector in combination with relatori, which is the test mode. Something similar is available also for Applica when we speak about controllers, and basically it's a mode that allows us to test the different functions of the sensors when we do maintenance in order to check if all the components are performing properly. I will spend some more words in another app, which is not a Carel proprietary app, but that can interact with our products for more value. I'm referring in particular to the possibility of using Telegram in combination with our BOSS supervisory system. For those who know of you who don't know BOSS, it is our supervisory system that we can connect to field devices. For sure, it covers IJW and the gas leakage detector that we presented. And we can centralize the monitoring of all the field devices in one point. Thanks to Telegram, BOSS can send to our mobile phone alarms and reports that allow the technician to keep the installation always under monitoring. Thanks to this interaction, the installer will always be aware of what happens on field, even from remote, and will always be prepared for the field intervention. On the other hand, it is possible to connect from remote to BOSS in order to do the optimization even remotely. Okay, summing up what we discussed, what are the key benefits of connectivity in this fast-changing environment for HVAC and refrigeration technicians? Well, first of all, thanks to the connectivity, we can have all the information at the right time in the right place. I am speaking about parameter description, alarms, and so on. This means for the technicians, less reading of technical manuals and, generally speaking, less things to learn. We reduce the possibility of making mistakes thanks to guided procedures via app and error-proof systems. And last but not least, we save a lot of time. First of all, by making the configuration and maintenance faster, but also reducing the time spent to learn the new practices. I want to close this presentation with our Carel motto that we use while speaking about refrigeration, which is connect to save. As I told in this presentation, connectivity is a huge part of our value proposition, and we think it is the real value that we can bring to our customers in order to enable 4 sources of saving. The first one is time and resources. As I said, it's a very valuable resource for technicians. So our purpose is to help them to achieve it. We want to save nature and environment in general, and also safety for people, which is becoming more and more important. We want to optimize energy efficiency, which is part of our mission. And obviously, we want to do what every refrigeration system has to do, so preserving food and avoiding food waste. Thank you very much. I finished with the presentation. If you have questions, I'm totally available for you. Here you can see my contact if you want to ask me from remote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Giovanni. Your presentation was very clear and thorough. We do have indeed a few questions, and I would start with the first one received by Ahmed. He would like to know, does the leak detector detect also R32 and hydrocarbons?
Well, the gas leakage detector covers most of the refrigerants that are currently common in the market. So it covers more or less everything. We have different versions of the gas leakage detector. At the moment, we have 4. Each of them covers a specific group of refrigerants. Okay, so when we choose what version to buy, we have to be careful in what version to choose. Anyway, they are for sure covered in the actual version. Yeah, so the simple answer is yes.
Okay, thank you. I would like to also ask Peter's question. The applications could be used for the annual obligations of refrigerant leak checking by the F-gas 3.0?
Oh, this is a good question. I honestly don't have a precise answers for that, but still the application is the interface of gas leakage detector that we use on field. With the application, we can connect when we are on field and see all the information that we have to get. If we want to take this information and access from remote or any way to keep a constant monitoring, what we suggest is to use our BOSS system connected to the gas leakage detector in order to bring the information wherever we are. So this, I think, is the best practice I can suggest to use the gas leakage detector.
Okay. I'm going to steal 1 more minute of yours to ask also Yannick's question, because I think it sounds interesting. What happens if I lose my connection while uploading the data? Do I lose everything?
Is it related, sorry, to Applica or?
Not specified, but I think maybe in general.
Okay, I assume apps in general. Well, if we speak about Applica, we have two ways of connecting to the controller: NFC connection and Bluetooth connection. NFC is a copy and paste connection. So what I'm doing is connecting to the controller, just touching it with my mobile phone. And I will do, let's say, offline all the setups. When I'm done with the setups, I will just paste what I've done in the controller by touching it again. So in this case, I think we don't need any kind of stability of the connection, because it's just a matter of copying and pasting. On the other hand, if I use Bluetooth, obviously I have to stay close to the unit. Obviously, it's much more, I would say, is higher usability to use Bluetooth, because obviously I don't have to get in touch to the controller. So if the position is uncomfortable, let's say, I can work from a certain distance, but still I have to be close to the controller in order to ensure that I don't lose the connection.
Okay. Very quickly, last question from Manuel, then we move on to the next presentation. He's asking, Applica and Rivera TE are free, or do we need license?
They are both free. So you just have to go to App Store. They are available both for iOS devices and Android devices. As I said, they are free. You just have to download them. You don't need any registration or anything. We also created some QR code stickers that you find both on IJW and on gas leakage detector. So in case an installer while working on field finds one of these devices, he can just scan the QR code on the sticker, and he will get automatically directed to the page to download the apps. So this makes the download even faster.
Thank you very much, Giovanni, for your time and presentation, which you see rose a lot of interest. And now I ask Kyle also to turn on the video. And the floor is yours, Kyle. Please kindly share your screen and start with your presentation for anything we're here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just to confirm, can you see my screen, Sylvia?
Yeah, no, I can see your camera.
Okay.
Let's see if it starts in a few seconds. Okay, it does.
This is better?
Yes.
Perfect.
Try to move to the next slide, please. So we just checked it works. Okay.
It's working?
Good.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you very much.
No problem. So, good morning, everyone. My name's Carl Chester-Marsden. I'm the technical training engineer here at Fieldpiece Instruments. And today I'll be sharing some information with you on system evacuation, why it's important, and ultimately how to make it an easier, faster, and better process. So what is vacuum? Well, in the HVACR industry, when we refer to the process of vacuum, what we're talking about is the process of reducing pressure in the refrigerant system to a specified pressure that is below atmospheric pressure. Now, the industry often refers to this vacuum as either pulling a vacuum or the evacuation of a system. So today I'd like to discuss what is needed to pull a vacuum or evacuate a system, and also why it's so important that it's carried out properly and effectively. Now, that can either be on a new install or on an existing system where the integrity of the pipework gets broken into during the service visit, as an example. And so as you can see here, the main issue that can arise from an evacuation not being carried out correctly is going to be refrigeration system efficiency issues, as well as premature equipment failure. What do these failures look like exactly? Well, we have the refrigeration diagram over on the right of the screen, which I'm sure a lot of people will already be familiar with. Now, the refrigeration cycle works on the principle of heat transfer. So refrigerant transfers their heat when they change phases. Refrigerants obviously absorb heat in the evaporator, and it turns from a liquid into a vapor, and then releases that heat within the condenser of the system, where the state of the refrigerant turns from a vapor back into a liquid. Now, the reason I mention that is because of the effect of non-condensable gases. And non-condensable gases within a refrigeration system is the first topic I want to highlight today. So when you have non-condensable gases in a refrigeration system, what happens is they simply take up space. And this then limits the refrigerant's ability to condense. This reduces the efficiency of the unit and forces the compressor or compressors on the system that we have to just work a lot harder. And then when we have this, it just means that we're lowering our system efficiency. We have higher power consumption because of this. And ultimately, like I already mentioned, we end up with premature equipment failure. So a big sign of non-condensable gases in a system is an abnormally high pressure on the high side of the system, or what is commonly referred to as a high head pressure. Now, the next topic I'd like to highlight is moisture inside a system. Now, any moisture or water inside a refrigeration system or air conditioning system is simply just bad news. The water can mix with the lubricating oil that we have inside our compressor, which in turn forms an acidic-like sludge substance, and that can cause corrosion within the internal components inside the system. This acid dissolves away at the insulation surrounding the motor windings in the compressor, and that then causes it to fail. And since the compressor is one of the most expensive parts in the HVACR system, we want to avoid changing this component and prolong its lifespan as best as we possibly can as engineers. Now, not only does moisture in a system cause all this, but it can also lead to other issues. It can lead to freezing at control components, such as expansion devices and capillary tubing. And this then causes a blockage that must be cleared before the system can run properly and efficiently. And I'm sure a number of people listening today on this webinar have had to deal with exactly that on more than one occasion. So what do we need to be able to carry out a good evacuation on a system? Well, looking at the diagram here on the screen, you'll see we need a vacuum pump on the right, connected with 2 vacuum-rated hoses to a refrigerant system on the left. Now, the hoses connect to a vacuum-rated VCRT, or valve core removal tool. And finally, we need a vacuum gauge to measure the progress of the evacuation is also needed. So this is the standard evacuation setup procedure, but other setups do exist, such as setups where only one hose is possible and where the vacuum pump would connect to a manifold and then the manifold be connected to a refrigeration system. What we'll do now is we'll look at each of these components in a bit more detail, starting with a suitable vacuum pump for the system. So the Fieldpiece vacuum pump lineup includes the VPX7 10 CFM model, the VP87 8 CFM model, and finally the VP67 6 CFM model. All 3 models function the exact same way, but they're differentiated by their CFM capacities. The larger the volume of the refrigerant system, the larger CFM capacity will be needed on the vacuum pump you're using. As a general rule of thumb, the 10 CFM pump is better suited for larger commercial systems, the 8 CFM pump for light commercial systems, and the 6 CFM pump for residential systems. Now, next up is arguably one of the most important factors to achieving a good vacuum, and that is to ensure that the oil within the pump is changed regularly. Now, this task of changing oil within a vacuum pump is often convoluted and quite tricky, which is why the majority of engineers I speak to within this industry own up and admit to either not changing their vacuum pump frequently enough, or in some cases, even admitting to never having changed that vacuum pump oil. Now, why it's so important to frequently change the oil is because of the functions that the oil serves within the pump. So the oil helps lubricate the internal moving components inside the motor. It also acts as a coolant, ensuring that the machine doesn't overheat. And most importantly, it assists in keeping a tight seal on all the components within the pump to ensure that we can get down to those very low vacuum pressures required. So it's super important to ensure that the oil is changed regularly, as certainly when the pump is in use on contaminated systems, that oil will absorb non-condensable liquids and moisture, and the oil will start to lose all of these sealing qualities that we just mentioned. Now, a way we at Fieldpiece have tackled the oil change frequency issue is to design the Run Quick oil change system. And some of you may be familiar with this system already, but for those who aren't, I'll outline some of the benefits here. So you have that large oil reservoir you can see in the picture that acts as your sight glass, and that is even visible in dark conditions thanks to the ultra bright blue LED that sits behind the reservoir, meaning you get a clear view of the oil condition much easier than you've ever had before. You've got the ball valve and bottle storage also that allows for easy draining of the old oil, and then a large wide mouth fill port for easy refilling of the new oil. An oil change on the Fieldpiece vacuum pumps takes around about 20 seconds, and it can be done even whilst the machine is running and pulling a vacuum with zero vacuum loss. So all of these features combined makes it the easiest vacuum pump oil change on the market to make the job for the engineer easier, faster, and better. Now, moving on to the port sizes available on the vacuum pump leads me nicely also onto the hose selection process. So our port sizes on the vacuum pump are the 1/4 inch port, the 2 3/8-inch ports, and also the 1/2 inch port. And another very important stage of achieving a good vacuum level is to ensure that the hoses being used are of short length, large diameter, and good quality. Now, the diameter here is what's the most important. The larger the diameter, the more efficient the vacuum pump can perform. And typically 3/8-inch hoses are the most commonly used in the air conditioning and refrigeration industry when pulling a vacuum. And having 2 of these on either side of the system, both the high side and the low side, is the preferred method for achieving the most efficient results. So at Fieldpiece, we offer 2 3/8-inch vacuum rated hoses, the HV1 and the HV1S. The HV1 has a 3/8 to 3/8-inch fitting type, and the HV1S is a 3/8 to 1/4 inch fitting type. And this just gives the flexibility to use the vacuum hose in combination with a 3/8-inch vacuum port on a manifold block by using the HV1 as an example, or alternatively, you can connect the vacuum pump directly to the refrigerant system by using the HV1S. Both the HV1 and HV1S are built with a 4-layer construction method, and both come with deep nailed brass fittings for a better grip in everyday usage conditions. We also include a triple ring crimp design, and that increases the reliability by ensuring that if a single crimp line does fail on the hose maintains its integrity with 2 backup ring crimps in place. So moving on from hoses, we can now look at the valve core removal tools. The VCRT lineup we offer is the VC2GE, dual valve with sight glass. Then we have the VC1GE, single valve with sight glass, and finally the VC1E, single valve VCRT. Now, what can valve core removal tools do? Well, the image on the right there shows the cross-section of a typical service valve. And there you can see the valve core in place. Now, valve cores are designed to restrict the flow and to minimize refrigerant loss. And so up to 90% of the access port can be restricted by a single valve core. Now, removing this maximizes the flow and can save literally hours on almost any job. Now, if we connect our 10 CFM vacuum pump to the system using the 3/8-inch vacuum rated hoses and evacuated without removing this valve core, there is a possibility that the potential flow becomes restricted to as little as 0.2 CFM. And remember, that's using a 10 CFM vacuum pump, which means we would be making use of 2% of the potential capacity. So the VCRT tool is designed to easily and safely remove this core with 0 loss of refrigerant to atmosphere, ensuring that the engineer conforms to the F-gas rules and regulations. But it also means that with the removal of that valve core, we're much more likely to get that full capacity out of the vacuum pump with a higher rate of flow through this service valve. So all three models come with a swappable fitting, and that makes the tool compatible with both 1/4-inch systems as well as 5/16-inch systems. Now, this fitting has an integrated O-ring seal, which means there is no fear of losing the vacuum rating integrity of 20 microns, even when you're swapping this fitting out. Finally, the integrated sight glass on the VC1 GE and the VC2 GE gives you that peace of mind to know you've captured the valve core on the first try, which means no more playing that game of, did I get it? So the capture rod has also been designed to ensure a good grip on the core, regardless if there's pressure in the refrigerant system or not, which means that there's no more of that blasting the valve core out at 70 kilometers an hour when you cannot get a good grip of the core. The end of the capture rod also includes a comfort spinner and magnet to make for easy operation and for safekeeping of the valve core when working with the system. So now we have our vacuum pump, hoses, and VCRT connected to the system. It's time to take a vacuum measurement. Now, before we get into the tooling that we use for measuring, I just want to explain what vacuum measurements we're looking for when we talk about the HVACR industry. So when referring to vacuum, we are dealing with very low pressures and very small changes in this pressure. So therefore, we need to use a small unit of measurement to be as accurate as possible. Now, on a traditional analog manifold gauge, like the one you see on the screen, they are often calibrated in 3 units of measurement: PSI, bar, and inches of mercury. However, all three of these measurements are deemed as a very coarse scale of measuring. And so as such, we don't generally use these to measure deep vacuum. A more effective range for the measurement of vacuum is millimeters of mercury absolute. And this covers the same range as those 3 previous units we just mentioned. However, it's a much finer scale. And so the 29.9 inches of mercury that we commonly see and is used on these analog manifold gauges, that all of a sudden becomes 760 millimeters of mercury absolute. Now, this range is more commonly referred to as the Torr scale, and Torr gauges or vacuum gauges are available to measure pressures close to absolute, typically between 0 to 20 and 0 to 40 Torr. Now, this unit can be shown on an even finer scale. So when using microns of mercury as a unit value, we have 1 Torr equating to 1,000 microns. And this then allows the engineer to have a clearer view of these very low pressures, as you can see here on the right with our Fieldpiece MG44 vacuum gauge displaying 1,820 microns in this case. So we've already touched on some of these, but I'd just like to mention the equipment that is commonly used to measure vacuum. So firstly, and perhaps the most common of all, is the analog manifold gauges. However, these simply are not suitable due to the lack of accuracy they provide in vacuum. And whilst a lot of the industry has invested in better measuring solutions that we'll come on to in a moment, it's definitely a slow transition, and one that hopefully educational videos, flyers, and even webinars such as today can assist in facilitating that changeover to these better suited measuring methods. Now, next up, we have the standalone vacuum gauge or micron gauge, such as the Fieldpiece MG44. And this is a must-have tool for ensuring a sufficient vacuum has been achieved. And these are now widely available. These are either available in either analog or digital, and digital often is having the advantage of a larger scale, as well as being able to measure more accurately within this larger measuring range. Then we move on to digital manifold gauges. The introduction of digital manifold gauges, specifically those with a dedicated vacuum sensor like the Fieldpiece SM3ATV and SM4ATV, has allowed the engineer to have an all-in-one device that can read both positive, negative, and vacuum pressure in high accuracy. So it's these last 2 devices, 2 and 3, the standalone vacuum gauge and digital manifolds with built-in vacuum sensor, that we should be using to obtain easier, faster, and better vacuum measurements on a system. So we've spoken about why and when it's important to achieve a good vacuum. We've spoken about good competent practices, as well as the measurements of vacuum and the equipment we should be using to measure it accurately. Now, I'd just like to quickly touch on a couple of common evacuation methods that we should be using out in the field. So firstly, we have the deep vacuum method. And secondly, we have the triple evacuation method. Now, I'm sure a lot of you will be familiar with both of these, or hopefully at least one of them. but we'll go over them briefly regardless. Now, the deep vacuum method here is ultimately the best method to use, but it can be very time consuming, certainly on the larger volume systems. And so this is the method of connecting up the vacuum pump and allowing the system to cool down into a vacuum over time until the desired vacuum pressure is achieved. Now, this level of vacuum pressure is usually specified by the refrigerant system manufacturer as to what you have to achieve. Now, the triple vacuum method can be achieved much quicker, but is more complex and is not quite as efficient. So here I've outlined a step-by-step guide on how to achieve the triple evacuation method. Now, I know this slide is quite text heavy. Now, the intention behind this is so that when you all receive a copy of this presentation, there's this slide here to advise you how to carry out the triple evacuation method in good detail. Now, you notice I've also included a chart on the right there, which outlines the target vacuum for each stage of the triple evacuation. And you may also notice that the left-hand column of that chart has temperatures. Now, the reason why temperatures are important to achieving a good vacuum is down to moisture levels. And so water in its liquid state is the most difficult to remove from a refrigeration system. And as we touched on earlier, it can also cause the most issues for us as well. So it's very important to ensure that we try and get all of this moisture out as best as we possibly can. Now, in order to do so with a vacuum pump, we must pull a vacuum to such a pressure that the ambient temperature around the refrigeration system will cause any of that water within the refrigeration or air conditioning system to boil. That water then becomes water vapor and then can be easily drawn out by the vacuum pump, where it will be safely dispersed into atmosphere and, more importantly, out of the refrigeration system we're working on. So you can see there that on the chart, the colder the mean plant temperature is, the lower the pressure we have to get on the vacuum. This then ensures that any moisture in the system is boiling off into a vapor, and so the vacuum pump can efficiently remove it. Now, the triple evacuation method requires 3 stages of vacuum level to be achieved, breaking each vacuum stage with oxygen-free nitrogen. This speeds up the overall evacuation time, but the system must be monitored consistently, which means and makes it less efficient as the deep evacuation method, the deep vacuum method. So to summarize then, for successful evacuation, it's important to use a suitably sized vacuum pump with fresh, clean oil for efficient and fast evacuation, large diameter vacuum rated hoses with a premium quality as to not run the risk of ruining the integrity of the vacuum rating, an easy to use valve core removal tool, which can remove the restriction in flow efficiently, effectively, and quickly, resulting in faster evacuation times. And finally, using an accurate digital vacuum gauge with either the deep vacuum or triple vacuum method to ensure that we remove all of the system contaminants, resulting in a more efficient and longer lasting refrigerant system. So that's it for my presentation today. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll just leave you with my contact details here if anyone has any questions or queries after the webinar that they'd like to follow up with. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. The presentation was indeed very complete and interesting. Many details. In fact, I gathered 3 questions out of the ones I received, which seem to be the more interesting, at least in my opinion. I would like to start with Jessica. She's asking, what is the right vacuum for a standard split system?
Yeah, it's a good question. So it's all about volume. Every vacuum pump can effectively bring a system into evacuation, even down to deep vacuum levels. It's all about the volume and the speed at which you want it to. As a rule of thumb, with split air conditioning systems, the volume isn't going to be that large. So you can get away with between a 3 to a 6 CFM vacuum pump without any issues. The good news is you can undersize your vacuum pump, but you cannot oversize your vacuum pump. Okay. So there is no risk of oversizing it and then it not being able to carry out the job. Okay,
that's clear. Thank you. I also have written the question from Phil. If we don't make the right vacuum, how our system will be affected with a lower performance, shorter life, more maintenance?
Exactly. Yep. So I think it's on slide 3 on this presentation. I basically state that the effects of incorrect evacuation is going to be premature equipment failure. That's the biggest one, because our compressors are working harder. The system efficiency is lower. but also of that acidic sludge that can be formed with the moisture in the system. That's going to be a big issue. But we've also got contaminants in the system, such as air as well, which takes up space in our system. And that is what also limits the system capacity. So you're going to have a system that doesn't last very long and is also not as efficient as it should be ultimately.
Okay, yeah, indeed. And it is already 12, so I'm going to go with the last question. And it is from Christian. He's asking, what's the most important parameter that I always have to check to make sure that my application is running well?
It's a great question. Great question. I'd say there's two things you need to check. You need to check your vacuum pump is operational with good clean oil. So a good check to do is to put a vacuum gauge directly on the vacuum pump before you even evacuate a system. And that just ensures that the vacuum pump is operational and operating correctly. If you don't have a good functioning vacuum pump to begin with, you are never going to be able to reach those low evacuation pressures that we need to reach the manufacturer's state. So a good parameter would be the physical condition of the vacuum pump and the micron value or torr value that it can achieve as a standalone device.
Thank you, Kyle, for your presentation and also for your insights. And I would like to ask the other speakers to join us back for the final debate and leave the word to Marco Buoni. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Silvia. Thank you very much, Kyle and Giovanni, for your great presentations. I would like, I think there is one more question from Graziella.
Yeah, right just now.
Yeah, maybe Silvia, you want to ask to Kyle still?
Yeah, Graziella is asking, how long is the vacuum for an industrial refrigeration system for commercial and food industrial application?
The question is a difficult one to answer. It's a very good question, but again, it's all down to the volume of the system. The larger the volume you have, the larger or longer it's going to take to evacuate. You can speed all of this up though by doing all of the methods I just presented. So ensuring that you have a suitable vacuum pump, a suitably rated CFM vacuum pump, ensure that you have large diameter hoses, and ensure that you remove all valve cores in service ports where possible. That is going to give you the best opportunity to evacuate the system as quickly as possible. But if you're looking for how many hours does it take, yeah, it's tough to answer that one, but this gives you the best speed you can possibly achieve using these methods.
Thank you, Kyle. So yes, so we have we are now at the final debate. I think this is an opportunity to ask questions also about the new F-gas 3.0. I'm sure we all have many questions on that point of a new F-gas regulation, new refrigerants, new tools, new procedures, and new obligations. I have for sure one question from Nikos Leonidas, which is one of our teachers, to be honest, and he's asking about the relatori certificate. If it is already good enough for renewal of a gas certificate. I would like to answer this one and tell him that we don't know yet how will be the renewal of the gas certificate. We need to wait for the implementing act of training and certification. We need to wait for what is the minimum requirements, what will be the top up of existing F-gas certificates. For example, for sure, the regulation says that we need from now to 2029, so in 5 years' time, to do a refresh training and certification to be updated and skilled to the new refrigerants. This is for sure mandatory and already written in the legislation. But to know what is needed from now on with the new refrigerants, natural refrigerant, we don't know yet what is needed, but F-gas real alternatives will be for sure a tool which is mentioned many times by DG Clima. Every time we speak with DG Clima, which we have, a periodical conversation, meetings, because they know that area is the body for dictating the right skills, giving advice for the right skills that should have definitions for the safety, environmental, and performance of the systems when installed. We also mentioned, Giacomo always mentioned real alternatives as a good project for learning on natural refrigerants. I think there's one more question for Kyle, because I think it's your friend. This Marco Tonon is always asking for you, Kyle. He's asking if you are going to see compatible vacuum pumps for hydrocarbons. I think also for Carel is a good question, because we are going to see a lot of compatibility from A1, A2L, A3. So my suggestion is no retrofitting. A1 systems are for A1 refrigerants. A2 systems are for A2 refrigerants. A3 systems are for A3 refrigerants. But maybe you want to add something, Kyle, and then Giovanni. Kyle,
yeah,
first.
so to answer Marco's question, very simply, yes is the answer. You will see a A3 compatible vacuum pump from Fieldpiece in the near future. And it's also, like you've just said there, Marco, it's an understanding of this is where the industry is going. There is a push for A3 systems down to the new F-gas regulations. So we are keeping a keen eye on how this industry is sort of growing and which area it's growing towards, and ensuring that we're putting everything in place to future-proof our products. And so there's definitely some exciting years ahead for Fieldpiece, that's for sure.
Giovanni, do you want to mention a bit about your A3 ready products? You have a kind of logo, A3 ready products, I think you mentioned.
Yeah, indeed. This is one of the directions that we are developing our new solutions for the future. Obviously, type of refrigerants to use is depending application to application, so there is not just one direction. And so, as Carel, we are trying to set up, let's say, for these future challenges and developing our solution in many different directions. So yeah, for sure, this is something going on.
Very good, very good. So we'll come out with an area F-gas guide very soon, because I know there are a lot of questions from, I'm sure Kyle and Giovanni are receiving a lot of questions for the new F-gas regulation, new obligation, new definitions, missing definitions also. There are some missing definitions, and we are, as association, as companies, as manufacturers, in duty to give answers. So we are very happy to give answers. So if you have some questions, please ask now. We are still 70 persons here with us. Now we are a bit late. We are 8 minutes past 12 Central European time, but we have still 2 minutes to answer your question if you have any. If not, Giovanni and Kyle, do you want to say anything else before we close?
Just to thank you for the opportunity to come on here and give our presentations today. And thank you very much for everyone attending. That's all I have to say.
Giovanni?
Same for me. Thank you from my side, and also speaking from Carel's side. If you have additional questions, you have my contact in the presentation, so feel free to contact me. Thank you.
There are some people raising their hand, but please write on the chat your question if you have. Please don't raise the question. We have not the opportunity to open the floor. I know Silvia has got some communication to give before we leave.
Yes, exactly. I wanted to take this opportunity to inform everybody of our next webinar. It's going to be in about 1 month's time, on the 21st of May, with 2 of our other partners, Testo and Nippon Gases. And we're going to announce the titles very soon. So just be in touch for the news. And once again, I remind everybody that in about 1 week time, you will receive the presentations, all 3 presentations of today, and the video recording also of the event. So you can see it any other time that you want.
Thank you so much. So thank you, everyone. I can see a lot of friends in the audience. Khaled, Rudy, Hamed, a lot of international friends, also some Arabic names that I'm not able to read. So thank you so much and see you next time. Ciao.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Ciao Giovanni, ciao Kyle, thanks.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.